someday we're all gonna die. And esports organizations are no different. There have been countless organizations in Counter-Strike over the years that are just kind of a glimmer in the back of my brain. And well, today I thought we would remember those that are sadly no longer with us. I do also gotta note, today's video is not gonna be talking about organizations who are fully disbanded, but more so just organizations who no longer exist in Counter-Strike. For starters, and you guys are gonna have to bear with me as a North American man, I'm going all the way back to 1.6 to remember some of the most legendary esports organizations of all time. The first ever North American team to win a major was Team 3D. Team 3D was founded in 2002 by Craig Torba Levine while he was a student at New York University. Then in 2004, it became one of the first professional esports teams to pay its players. They then went on to win CPL Winner 2002 and World Cyber Games 2004, being the second team in Counter-Strike history to win at least 2 majors, and hosting some of the most legendary North American players like Rambo, K-Sharp, Moto, Kane, and Bullseye. Sadly though, after one of the most evil creations in esports history, the Championship Gaming Series, Team 3D would completely collapse, seeing as they went all in on CGS and that league collapsed after like a fucking year. Team 3D, you will be remembered. But you know who else needs to be remembered? A team that I just learned existed in this millisecond actually. They were one of the top 16 teams at World Cyber Games 2004, one of the majors that Team 3D won, and that is Plan B Esports. No, this is not just a random team name, it was an actual Austrian esports organization, and would you believe it, they were a team as recently as 2025. Hey man, God bless Plan B Esports, man. Unfortunately, at least from what I can see, they never even played in a tournament that was big enough to be listed on HLTV, which I guess is fair when you consider the core is Austrian and there's about 0 tier 1 professional Austrian players, so it does make sense.
Hello guys, it's me, Garmour. The first time you've ever seen me in person before. If you guys would like to support me or the stuff that I do here, check out the new long-term sponsor of the Garmour YouTube channel, SkinSwap. SkinSwap is the #1 place to trade your Rust or Counter-Strike skins for new ones where you can instantly upgrade your inventory. And if you use my code Garmour, you can get up to $50 on a free skin and a 3% lifetime selling bonus. And now you can easily buy skins off of the Chinese marketplace for cheaper prices than you ever could on the Western marketplaces. I truly think this is the best feature on any skin trading website, but if you are looking to sell, you can sell your skins for crypto, PayPal, Venmo, and a bunch of other withdrawal methods. Along with this, SkinSwap has a vault system now, which makes it the most rewarding skin trading website. And of course, don't forget the giveaways. And I think that's it. Thank you to them, thank you to you guys, and back to the video.
The next team I want to talk about is an organization who was one of the first ever successful international teams, and that is Team NOA. Team NOA was founded by a former Norwegian 1.6 player called BSL, and even won their first ever Counter-Strike major in 2004. This was with the international team I listed, which included a Canadian in Jaguar, an American in Method, and 3 Norwegians, with one of them being the biggest fucking chat I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, you may have been expecting more different nationalities, but for the time, when like considering almost every single 1.6 team was fully 5 national players, even having 2 players that weren't from Norway was kind of insane. But unfortunately for NOA, this would be the last major they would ever win before they would merge with Team MTW at the end of 2007. Now, Team MTW is another team that isn't around anymore, but after NOA and MTW merged, they became one of the best 1.6 teams in the world, winning World Cyber Games 2008 and losing in the finals of World Cyber Games 2010. And MTW actually transitioned into CSGO, where they were a team until 2016. Now listen, I could talk about forgotten 1.6 teams all day, and honestly, I personally think it's incredibly entertaining, so maybe I do another video on only 1.6 teams, but I'm gonna slightly move on to 2 teams who were in 1.6 and were legendary in 1.6, but also survived for a lot longer than the past 2 teams I talked about, and that is Complexity and SK Gaming. Complexity, along with Team 3D, is the only North American team to have won 2 majors in 1.6, winning Esports World Cup 2005 and CPL Summer 2006. During this time, they also housed probably the greatest talent in all of North America in Fraud, along with other legends like Sunman, Storm, Trip, and Warden. And well, the team was originally founded in 2003 by Jason Lake, and God bless him, man. Jason Lake is a pillar of Counter-Strike. He truly is a legend. I pretty much made an entire video talking about him, but he was actually a real estate agent from from what I know. Yeah, Complexity was started by Jason Lake in 2003 after he paid 2 gamers from his own pocket to form a team. He himself was on the team before removing himself in 2004 and shifting into an administrative and coaching role. Lake was a real estate lawyer based in Atlanta, Georgia, and he paid all of his players' salaries and travel expenses out of his own pocket, which totaled more than $400,000 by 2007. Jason Lake is a fucking goat. Now, Complexity would continue to be one of the staples in Counter-Strike for the next 2 decades, and eventually in 2017, he would even get a huge investment from Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. But then eventually in 2024, Complexity was reacquired by an investor group led by Jason Lake for a little over $10 million. And while sadly, only a year later in 2025, Complexity would exit the Counter-Strike scene. This was truly one of the saddest days in Counter-Strike history. I mean, the team had literally been around for over 20 years at this point, being one of the pillars of North American Counter-Strike, and all I can say is I hope they come back soon. The other team on this list is SK Gaming, who is without a doubt one of the most prestigious organizations in Counter-Strike history. They won 4 1.6 majors in the first couple years of the game existing. This was of course when they were mainly a Swedish team led by Potty and Heaton, before they eventually took a break in 2004, only making the finals of one, before then once again winning a major in 2005, taking another break for a few years and winning another one in 2011. They ended 1.6 as 6-time major winners, but they decided that wasn't enough for them. So then after buying out the Brazilian team, Luminosity, which had just won the previous major in 2016, SK Gaming win another major in CSGO at ESL 1 Cologne 2016. They would continue to be one of the best teams in the world, winning various other S-tier events in 2017, but sadly the German organization completely exited Counter-Strike in 2018, and we have not seen them since. Next, let's hop over to the French Counter-Strike scene, because my god, do we have a lot of dead teams from this region. First, let's talk about Clan Mystic. They were one of the first really good French teams in CSGO, winning an S-tier tournament, Electronic Sports World Cup 2013 against Very Games, which is actually a really cool story because apparently there was huge beef between Clan Mystic and Very Games during this time. There was like a little civil war in the country. Very Games had legends like Existence, Smiths, Shocks, NBK, and Scream, while Clan Mystic had Kiyoshima, Kukli, Apex, Hearts, and Irek. But unfortunately for Clan Mystic, at the first major in CSGO history, DreamHack winner 2013, Very Games would place 3rd to 4th, and Clan Mystic would miss playoffs. This rivalry continued, and Clan Mystic would go on to lose in the finals of Fragbite Master Season 1 to NIP, lose in the finals of ESL Pro Series France 0-3 to Very Games, and miss the playoffs of Katowice. The team would then completely disband in May of 2014. Along with them, we have French organization Millennium, who started from Dark Age of Camelot. Dark Age of Camelot. Call me a low tier normie, bro. I don't know what the fuck that game is. But then they were in World of Warcraft, and that helped them expand into Counter-Strike, Warcraft 3, StarCraft, League of Legends, Star Wars, and they even had a female Counter-Strike team. And I mean, some legends played under this organization. Their first ever team was the X-Epsilon roster that included players like Uzi, Shocks, and Scream. Then 2 months later, they released the entire team, with the reason being they didn't have satisfying enough results for the organization. They then re-entered Counter-Strike in December of 2015, picking out players like Major and Sixer, and while they had some crazy roster instability in 2016, and then after Major left in November of 2016, the team would completely disband. Now, we talked about Very Games a little bit when we talked about Clan Mystic, but as soon as we start talking about Very Games and we just go down a rabbit hole of dead organizations in the French scene, Very Games was a prominent French game server hosting company that was founded in 2004 and provided high-performance servers for various multiplayer games. They then went on to pick up their first Counter-Strike team in 1.6 in 2008, and while they did have pretty good success in 1.6, the team really took off after they entered CSGO. They were at the time the best French team in the entire scene. Sorry, Clan Mystic. But then sadly in 2014, they would disband and drop their entire CSGO team, and that's the last we have ever seen of Very Games. But then the old Very Games roster would join Titan, who I'm sure you know of because their sticker is one of the most expensive in the entire game. This organization was located in Singapore, and well, during Titan's time in the game, they would have legends like Shocks, Kenny S, NBK, Smiths, Kiyoshima, Happy, Apex, Kukuli, and Maniac.
Hell no, man.
Kukli is then banned, and Titan is disqualified from DreamHack Winter 2014. They also missed the playoffs of Katowice 2014, missed the playoffs of Cologne 2014, missed the playoffs of Katowice 2015, missed the playoffs of Cologne 2015, and also missed the playoffs of Cluj-Napoca 2015. They were disqualified for cheating at one major and failed to make the playoffs of any other one they attended. Unfortunately, Titan was kind of a disaster,
and I've decided that I want to die.
And at the start of 2016, Titan would cease operations, citing financial constraints partially related to Kukli's ban. But do not stress. Before Titan completely disbanded, they did a player swap with another organization known as Envious. Envious had joined CSGO by picking up Team LDLC. LDLC, another French organization that no longer exists. But this time, we're kind of going back to the good old United States of America, because that's where NV was located. Except I don't blame them for picking up a French team, because shortly after joining the game, they would win DreamHack Open Cluj-Napoca 2015. This was with a roster of Happy, NBK, Kiyoshima, Kenny S, and Apex. Team Envious would continue to be one of the best teams in the entire scene for a while, before having a wild-ass roster. They had Kerrigan for a while, Calix, Mihu, Moose, Fugly, Android, Thomas. I mean, what the fuck? Oh, I'm disgusted. I've had enough of talking about French teams.
24 hours later.
All right, fellas. New day, same fit. Where were we? Yes. I was gonna go from talking about French back to talking about NA because it's my video. I want to talk about NA. Along with Titan, maybe the other most famous dead organization in Counter-Strike's history is iBuyPower. Now, iBuyPower isn't really an organization. They are a custom gaming PC and PC building company who happened to sponsor a North American team called Denial, and that just kind of turned into Denial being iBuyPower, and then eventually iBuyPower did run the team as well. This all started in 2013, and for a while they were considered the best team in all of North America until the scandal, and they eventually completely disbanded at the start of 2015. Speaking of Skadoodle, I am gonna also talk about Cloud9 for a little bit because they were my favorite team. They started in 2014 by picking up Complexity, which included Hiko, Nothing, Semphis, Sean Gares, and Shroud, eventually picking up Skadoodle after the whole iBuyPower incident and winning the region's first ever major in 2018. Then the team turned into a complete dumpster fire. They eventually gave up on North America, signed the Gambit roster, and while that team was decent for a little bit, they did win an S-tier tournament. Towards the end, it kind of was a complete disaster. And after that disaster, in 2025, Cloud9 would officially drop their entire Counter-Strike team and have not been in the game since. And let me tell you what, fellas, I get that they betrayed North America. I'm still really hoping this video ages poorly and they do come back into the game soon. And then, I mean, we have a billion other orgs I could talk about. There is Splice, who I feel like is mostly just known for the Summit 1G clip. There is Ghost, who I kind of fondly remember as a pretty good tier 2 team. I always thought Wardell was pretty good. They of course had Steel from old iBuyPower and other pretty decent tier 2 players like Sub Rosa, Kusta, Neptune. You know, I thought they were a cool story. And they even had some not horrible showings at like tier 1 events, but eventually completely disbanded in 2019 before rejoining the game in 2025 with a female roster, but that also disbanded in 2026. Then there is Chaos, who I feel like is mostly known for housing Vanity, who went on to play Valorant similar to Wardell. Leaf, who also went over to Valorant and had that drama with MIBR, where the entire Brazilian scene was convinced brother had to be cheating because they ended up beating their baby boys in a series 2-1. And I mean, there is so much more. CLG from the early days. CLG was lit, man. It's kind of a sad story because I kind of feel like CLG was like the middle child of North America. You know, for the longest time, Cloud9 was fire, Liquid was fire, and CLG was always pretty good, but they were just kind of also there. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe CLG did have hardcore fans, but I feel like most of them were, you know, fans of Cloud9 or Liquid. I mostly remember this team single-handedly because of Tarek. Tarek was doing God's work on this team for the first couple years he was on it, but they would unfortunately completely disband in 2018. E United was a team for a while. I remember them because of Cooper, mostly. Well, Cooper and Ace, if you guys remember Ace. I think he went on to be a pro pro in Apex and other games like Valorant. I remember Rogue with Hiko, Cadian, and Rike for a while. That org also only lasted a couple of years. You know, Sean Gares led Misfit, TSM, which was an NA org, but started by signing Dignitas, which consisted of Dupree, Zippix, Device, Cajun B, and Kerrigan. But that team only lasted like a year. Then after that didn't work out in 2016, they signed players like Semphis, FNS, Automatic, Sick, and Vice. And I mean, even though TSM did start as a Danish team, they did more for North America than a lot of other teams did, because they not only brought Automatic into the scene, at least they helped Automatic break out into tier 1, but also Twist. And Automatic and Twist are quite literally two of the best North American players ever. You know, both major winners. Twist is probably the best Canadian player of all time at this point. God bless you, TSM, even though you've been kind of evil over the past couple of years. A team that I won't say any good things about is Evil Geniuses, which is actually sad, man, because EG is a super old org. They first opened their Counter-Strike division in 2001, so I do want to respect them. And they were a pretty good 1.6 team towards the end of the game as well. They had fraud, they helped nothing break into the scene, but that's about where I end saying anything nice about them. They had a cool team when they first re-entered CSGO in 2019 with the NRG roster, but then they did some, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, man. They had like 18 academy teams. They had Mihu for a little bit. You know, they had the Stewie 2K IGL era as well. It's just, ugh. And the last team I'll talk about for the NA section here is Optic. Optic was lit when they were in the game, but I feel like for North America, at least they were kind of just a flash in the pan. They had a really cool roster that was actually fairly strong in tier 1. They even won a tier 1 tournament, and that was with Rush, Naf, Mixwell, Tarek, and Stanislaw. Oh my goodness, bro. This team was so lit. It just sucks that like pretty much every other North American team, they have a cool project and then it just completely collapses. The team kind of gave up being North American in 2018 and switched to being fully European. And well, I mean, they were okay during this time, but the team would leave Counter-Strike in 2020, heading over to Europe and even some teams in Asia and Australia. Genuinely, bro, rip Gambit. Gambit was a legendary org. From what I can see, Gambit was a Russian professional esports org that was owned by MTS, which was a Moscow-based telecommunications company. And after joining the game in 2016, they would have meh success. And well, that was until they signed the fucking GOAT Zeus and were the first ever CIS team to win a CSGO major. Now, after this legendary run, shortly after, Zeus would go back to Na'Vi, and Gambit would kind of be in a weird place for the next couple years until they hit their second peak when they just promoted their Gambit Youngsters team that included GOATs like Shiro, Axile, Hobbit, Inters, and Nafany. They started frying, but then in 2022, they would sadly sell their roster to Cloud9 and have not fielded a Counter-Strike team since. I miss Gambit, man. The Gambit jackets were sick. I'm gonna be honest, I think one of the greatest pictures in Counter-Strike history is just any picture with Zeus having that the Gambit jacket on. And I mean, fuck, man, there's a lot of teams from the CIS region that I kind of miss. I always had a really soft spot for Hellraisers. I always thought their logo was sick until they changed it to that bullshit ass, I don't even know what you call it, like 2 eyebrows. That truly has to be the worst redesign in history. But nah, they had some sick players. They had a Dren, Doja, Markaloff on their team. Early days Simple played for Hellraisers for a while. And then even later on, they had some sick players under their banner. Issa, Woxic. You know, I always thought Hellraisers was really cool. Another team that's kind of in the same part of my brain as Hellraisers is Flipside Tactics. And they were a North American org who was actually co-owned by a former NFL player whose name was Ricky Lumpkin. When they first joined the game in 2014, they were a Swedish team, but after not a lot of success, they would switch over to being a CIS team that included the GOAT Blade, World Edit, Bondic, Simple, and Markaloff. Like, of course, you have to love the team because of Simple, and that's probably why I have Flipside Tactics and Hellraisers in the same part of my brain is literally just Simple. But also, I was always just like attached to World Edit because I thought the name was fire. I played Minecraft. It was just a sick name. But yeah, year after year, Blade would pretty much just farm major sticker money for this org. And well, after he left, the team kind of completely crumbled and left the game in 2019. There was also Vega Squadron, who everyone loved in like 2018. You know, they had players like Mir, Chopper, Hut G, JR, a Vanguard with Jamin Sanji. I miss Sanji. And then also another team I have very fond memories of in and Space Soldiers. Realistically, with Space Soldiers, I just fucked with the name and the logo. I thought it was sick. You know, this was pretty much Eternal Fire / Aurora before they were Eternal Fire / Aurora. You know, the best iteration of this team was Zantares, Engine, Paz, Major, and Calyx. And they were just a cool, fully Turkish team to follow. It really was mostly the name and the logo, though, that I liked. But yeah, I think in 2018, there was like some drama with the organization. I don't know exactly what happened, but it says that the Space Soldier players refused to continue playing under the organization. Apparently, there were some issues with the organization's salaries, but you know, at the end of the day, it did all work out. Not for the org, but at least it worked out for the players. And then similar to TSM, I talked about them a little bit earlier. Dignitas was in the game for a while. Another North American esports organization who first entered the game in 2004, playing pretty much all the way through 1.6. And then in CSGO, there were mostly Danish teams. In 2014, signed the Astralis core of Device, Zipnix, and Dupree. They had Kerrigan for a while. Then after that team went over to TSM, they stayed as a mainly Danish team with other players like Pimp, AZ, Kierby, Nico. You know, we're kind of mid for a while afterwards, went international. Then in 2020, they had Forest, Get Right, Exist, Freiburg, and Holzerk. Yep, we're signing that squadron in the big 2020. No disrespect, but they were like, all of these players were like 8 years past their prime, except for Holzerk, of course. But yeah, after that project failed, then they completely disbanded in 2022. There's of course also North, who I think is mostly remembered for MSL and the drama of them stealing Kierby from Astralis. There's Godsent, who is mostly known for that insane swap they did with Fnatic. That kind of just ruined the Fnatic era for no reason, and then it was completely undone like a couple months later. Another personal favorite team of mine, if we're going down to Australia, is Renegades. I remember this team very fondly. I remember the Nifty 50 very fondly, and I remember how I would always cheer for them because I fucked with the Australian roster. You know, they had Goats, JKS, and Azar on the team for a bit. Even Sponge played here. You know, Naf played for this team for a while. They were just like, I always thought they were just a really cool team. And after eventually picking up Liaz and Gratisfaction and Kassad as a coach, they literally became one of the best teams in the world and were eventually picked up by 100 Thieves. And then would continue by picking up the Greyhound Gaming roster, which gives me a perfect transition into Greyhound Gaming. Greyhound Gaming is a sad story, man. A very sad story. They were founded and managed by one man, William Gray. I'm pretty sure he funded this entire team through his own pockets, just as like a passion project. And they did have some legends on the team, man. They had Dexter, Dick Stacy, but unfortunately, after missing a major and not having any sticker money in 2024, they would have to cease operations and leave the game. You know, if we want to go way back in Australian history, there's also Vox, which is kind of the team where Sponge really broke out on. This is where Sponge started playing more in tier 1 with. Sponge was the IGL here, and they were kind of the default Australian team that would always be at the majors, but they didn't really do a ton there and eventually left the game in 2016. And I mean, this is pretty much all I got for this video. Like, there's a bunch of other teams from South America that I didn't really talk about. Luminosity, who won a major. Immortals, who went to a major final. There's Fours, who had to go because of match fixing. At least I think that was a part of the reason. Fuck, man. And Fours was founded in 2001. I truly hate seeing organizations that have been around for like 20 years disbanding and not being in the game anymore. It's just sad stuff, man. I also remember Penta and Tropic was decent for a while. Vici Gaming, Vici Gaming were legendary. I don't know how many of you guys will know this team, but there was a German team known as Planet Key Dynamics, which I thought was cool. They were literally just a team under the wings of Planet Key, which was a price comparison service for game keys. I don't know how they made enough money to have a Counter-Strike team, but I guess they did. And they were even around for quite a long time, starting in 2013 and disbanding only in 2021. Yeah, man, overall, there's been a ton of sick organizations that have come and gone in Counter-Strike. And I mean, there's a lot that I miss very, very dearly. I guess I have more of a personal connection to North American orgs, you know, for obvious reasons. I want Cloud9 to come back. I want Optic to come back. I want Renegades to come back. I want Gambit to come back. I need Complexity to come back, man. Complexity is heartbreaking. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy, you know what to do. Leave a liking on the video, subscribe a link, turn on notifications. And if there was a team that you have remembered that I didn't talk about, you can put it down in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.